On this slide here, you'll see a diagram very easily of glucose, but you'll have these complex glycosides, which we'll talk about next week, and glucoses will hang off of them. So they will be created on various forms and given up. They're kind of a currency. They're kind of absorption mechanism for other chemicals. So we might just be using them to absorb the other chemicals and then break off the chemicals later and use them, but the glucose or the sucrose or the various saccharides are used. Again, we have the monosaccharides, the single sugars, the disaccharides, 2 singular units, the short chain, 3 to 10 saccharides, oligosaccharides, and the long chain ones, they're huge. When I say huge, we mean huge. The glucose is also called human blood sugar. Sometimes it's called grape sugar. It's a direct precursor, by the way, of vitamin C. We cannot change glucose into vitamin C. At least most humans cannot change glucose into vitamin C. Some can. In fact, some Orientals can change MSG, monosodium glutamate, which is a form of sugar. They can change it into vitamin C. Us, a rat and a bat, can't do it. Almost every other mammal can do it, but there are some humans that can do it. It's half of sucrose, table sugar, and it's literally the biggest currency in our body. We'll be seeing the glucose over and over and over in various forms. It might not be the important part of it, but it might be the engine that drives it. Glucose is literally the currency in our bodies. If we wanted to give it an analogy, it's kind of like the dollar bills. It is our dollar bills in our body. We'll have other things that are brokers for it, ATP, nicotinic acid, etc., but the actual currency is the ions, but it's related to how glucose works. Another very important monosaccharide is fructose. It's the fruit sugar. It's another half of sucrose. Fructose by itself is not problematic, but it can become problematic if it's made into high fructose corn syrup, HFCS. Really, an awful lot of foods are made with this because they can make a food taste way sweeter by turning corn into fructose and injecting it into foods. This can actually has been shown to become fairly dangerous in our society because a lot of people are consuming way too much of this in the form of diet pops, ordinary pops or fructose drinks and energy drinks and those things. And it has led to all kinds of sugar problems. Theoretically, in the past, it was thought that fructose would not turn into glucose and it wouldn't cause blood sugar problems, but the fructose will change into glucose and can cause significant sugar problems along the line. So fructose in moderate amounts are really good, but not the industrialized area. And you're driving down the highway in Tennessee and you see these high fructose corn syrup factories spewing out the stuff, just grinding that corn and making sugar stuff. Yes?
Is it true that large quantities of fruit or fructose metabolize into uric acid?
Do a large amount of sugars or fructose metabolize into uric acid? Not directly. You can't have uric acid without having nitrogen, right? Urine is... uric acid comes from there. But you can metabolize it as you're pulling out proteins. So if you have the proteins in those, so it can build up gouty phenomena. There's no question gout can be directly related to sugar consumption. Not a question. So we'll talk about that momentarily when we get into Syndrome X and be able to look with it. So you can see the fructose and the fructose and the glucose look fairly similar in nature. There's many other molecules of single saccharides, even though the glucose and the fructose are the major ones we have. We have a variety of ones, mannose, exose are some of the most common. But we can just put various things on it. For example, if we do put a nitrogen group on a glucose, we have an amine group on it. It's called glucosamine. So all that glucosamine that really works on our joints, it's just a sugar with an amine group. That's what glucosamine is. So if a person has a bad sugar problem, they have diabetes or whatever, you don't want to give them too much glucosamine sulfate, because it's a very, and what will happen in this case? If a person takes a lot of glucosamine and has a sugar problem, they're going to end up with a sugar problem, drop an amine off, and it ends up being uric acid, and the uric acid becomes the gout. Okay, so it can cause further inflammation. I'm not suggesting glucosamine is not healthy. I use it in my practice quite a lot. It really works good for all kinds of different inflammation joints. But I'm just saying, if I take a glucose and just throw something little on it, I can change its feature. Uronic acid will be the same kind of thing. Here I've just put a carboxylic acid on a glucose, and now I've got uronic acid, which we'll find in all kinds of gums and pectins and stuff like that. And we'll look at them further on down the line. Again, what I've suggested is typically when you see them in a textbook, they look like this, but you never find them like that in nature. Because they usually hydrolyze as soon as they get in water, they form rings. And these rings are more along the lines, and they're not even like that. They're more of a three-dimensional thing. So here's a beta-D glucose molecule, which we would find in something like cellulose. You can also put an OH. What's an OH? Does everyone remember what a functional group of OH is? Alcohol, yeah. If you put an OH on a sugar, it's not legally a sugar, so we end up with sorbitol. So sorbitol is really a monosaccharide with OHs in it, so it's not going to work in the system the same, but it can be changed into a sugar. But it's not technically a sugar, so it won't directly affect you the same way. So sorbitol, several of these things. This is a polyalcohol. Why? Poly means many. There's many OHs. Look at all the OHs there. Oh my God, they're everywhere. It's used, the semi-synthesized glucose, from a commercial level. And so it can be used as a substitute. Mannitol will do the same thing. It can be found in several different things as units of these long chains. You're going to find mannitol in mannose, which is part of an aloe vera branch polysaccharide that can have immune modulating qualities. So it can be very good. There's a variety of those things. It can also have a slightly laxative effect because it creates bulk in the intestinal tract. Disaccharides, we have two sugars together. In this case, we have the glucose and the fructose together. But you can have, besides the sucrose, the glucose and the fructose make sucrose, you can have maltose, which is glucose-glucose. You can have lactose, milk sugar, which is glucose-galactose. And various of these disaccharides will have different functions. For most part, though, the disaccharide we consume is sucrose. Sucrose comes almost exclusively these days from sugarcane, because there's a huge industry around that. It used to come quite a bit from sugar beet, and so southern Alberta used to be a major sugar beet part of the world. But because of the way the industries worked, they actually feed everything into one great big huge sugar mill, and what comes out the other end you don't know. So to be honest with you, if I ate sugar, I'd rather have sugar beet. I would rather support a local farmer than be able to beat up some third world country and take all their fertile land that they're starving to death off of and grow sugar. And it's not an idle problem. It is absolutely horrendous. We have basically surfanized a large part of the tropics to feed our sugar addiction. How many people in this room think they're addicted to sugar? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 people are telling the truth. The rest of you are a bunch of liars. If you're a North American, you're addicted to sugar. You might be a recovering addict, but you are addicted. For sure you are. It's almost impossible to get around it. And we'll talk about why here momentarily.